Hello, everyone. My name is Christine, and I'm the host here at the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, the show where we connect your modern life to your Hungarian heritage by building bridges and connecting the circles of Hungarians around us. This podcast is a place where everyone is welcome, where you don't even need to be Hungarian or speak Hungarian to join in on the fun. Each week, we will talk about all the things that we love about Hungary and Hungarian people. So, if you're looking to make that first connection to your Hungarian heritage, or you're looking to dive deeper, then this is the place to be. Thanks for joining us today. In this last interview episode of Season 1, our Sweet 16 episode, I have the privilege of speaking with Anna de Cheke Qualls, who is not only behind the communication and social media of the TISA Ensemble, who you may recognize as a previous guest of the podcast, but Anna also brings her professional expertise to the conversation, as she is a leader in the field of communications. We talk specifically about the big Hungarian community, or the diaspora outside of Hungary. We discuss how important it is for Hungarian communities, organizations, businesses, and even people to maintain strong, consistent communication with not only their social media presence, but with each other in efforts to maintain relevance and provide support for existing communities and people, as well as the ability to welcome and support the new and potentially interested people who are looking to connect to their Hungarian heritage. What makes this episode so great is that we discuss a myriad of options and suggestions as we are trying to spread positivity by igniting the communication practices, specifically through social media, which we know will bring our diaspora communities even closer. And it will provide an avenue for all of those seeking a closer connection to their Hungarian heritage. And before we get started with this episode, the positive topics Anna and I discuss can be used for anyone seeking to increase their presence and connection within their own specific community. Let's take a listen. I would like to welcome Anna de Cheke Qualls to the podcast today. She is the social media manager for the TISA Ensemble, a former guest of the show. And we became fast friends after Anna was so generous to repost my things for the podcast and send me referrals. So that's why we're lucky enough to be talking to Anna today, and which leads us directly into the topic. We're going to be talking about how we can create long-term sustainability of the Hungarian heritage and come up with some strategies of how to move forward to maintain this great culture in the United States. Let's get started. Welcome, Anna.
Yes. Hi, Christine. It's nice to finally meet you on the podcast, and glad to be here.
Thank you for coming today. So before we talk about like long-term sustainability and maintaining relevance and all of that official stuff, tell us a little bit about your Hungarian heritage. Like, what was it like growing up for you? Were you in a community and things like that?
Sure. So first of all, my parents and I came here in the 1980s before the wall came down. And we came here for a year because my father at the time had an opportunity to work here for a year as a postdoc in Western Massachusetts. And for very little money, it was something like $16,000 a year. So we came here, and we actually came through Checkpoint Charlie, which is, iconic to many folks.
Absolutely.
And we landed in Western Mass, and I remember having 7 feet of snow and just being completely surprised by how much snow there can actually be. And we ended up staying beyond we were intending to, because my mother's 2 brothers, my grandmother was already here in California, and they were begging us to stay. My 2 uncles, János and Tamás, were 1956 refugees, and my grandmother joined them soon thereafter. And so, after much discussion and conversation, there was a decision to stay. I think I would be remiss to mention that my father was more reluctant to stay, perhaps, but for sure it was a good decision. And we ended up landing in a community that really was very disconnected from a greater Hungarian community. It was in a small town, and we didn't really have any peers or friends at all. And I will say that, we spoke Hungarian at home, but at the time, having a different language wasn't quite as welcome as it is now. And so over time, our Hungarian at home became less and less. And, we were trying very hard to assimilate and also, truthfully, to master a new language, because, we were thrown straight into elementary and middle school and had to, function and had to learn the language very quickly. So, and then skip ahead to, present day. I think like most of us, I think when we have children, I think we feel an intense need to reconnect with a part of us. And so that was definitely something that, we and my husband and I, who's American, took very seriously when we had our son.
Right. That's an interesting experience, because everybody thinks, just to backtrack a little bit, that when people come over, they're always coming over with other groups of the same culture. So your experience was definitely a little bit more limited with being around other Hungarians. So now you've turned that focus, you and your husband have turned that focus to make sure that, your son experiences a little bit more of that connection and that feeling of community. And I know when we spoke previously, you're speaking to him in only Hungarian in the household. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing, if I can suggest to others, or at least to talk about our journey, one thing that we have been able to do, thanks largely to the fact that my partner husband is very, very, very supportive of this bilingual idea, and was from the get-go. Two things really played into the situation for us. One was that, again, he was extremely supportive, and two, that we decided to homeschool. And homeschooling was not, it was nothing about Hungarian connection or identity. It was more about personal decisions we had to make about the kind of human being, the ethos, the values, and frankly, what I think we believed about humanity, that we thought that homeschooling would be a good option for us. And the side benefit of that was that Leo, our son, was able to be bilingual from the very get-go. In fact, his first language was Hungarian, and his first word was actually "Sena," which when he was a baby, he heard a siren, so he said "Sirena," but he was a baby, so he said "Sena, Sena, Sena." That was his first word, and he would talk to himself in Hungarian. But one of the other things that we did was he was allowed only to watch things in Hungarian. So I want to say, it sounds pretty draconian, pretty strict, but he's living in an English culture, American culture. So to make sure that he had some essence of the language, other than just daily kitchen Hungarian, as we call it, konyha magyar, he had to read and listen to the spoken word. We read quite a bit. I think we were huge on Hungarian books. It ended up that, now my involvement in TISA is because, he's pursued Hungarian folk dancing with TISA and with Sucianos in Chicago. So, it's come full circle. So and also he participates in the Hungarian Scouts, Cheke, DC Cheke, which is also a really great community for young people. So that's been the side benefit of, and when we go to Hungary, he has friends, he can connect.
And I don't think those methods are draconian. I think they're actually quite common for people of really any heritage, just, from listening to conversations, throughout life. That's what a lot of parents do. They speak the home language at home. That is pretty commonplace when people are trying to preserve their heritage. I was a teacher, and it was pretty diverse in the community. And that's what a lot of the kids said, that we only speak, X at home. because my parents want to preserve the language. So pretty common, and I think it turns out to be a benefit, especially because your husband is so supportive. So, I mean, it's great that it's 2023 and those are options that people have because, as I spoke about many times before, prior generations, it was more of the assimilation is what would happen. You'd come to the US and you were really on the precipice of that as a young person when you were growing up because you lived in such a limited Hungarian community. Like, it's great that your family worked so hard to preserve that as much as they could because it could have gone like either way. Let's talk about this very important topic because you've developed this passion for long-term sustainability of the Hungarian heritage and the culture. And I feel like it's definitely a message that we need to send because we don't live in a time where we're getting large influxes of immigration of Hungarian communities. So, as we go forward, like I mentioned in another episode, that communities start to move out from that center of the community through marriage, jobs, and, life. So what are some of the things that you've noticed or areas that are lacking or that you've identified that you feel are important that we need to address and fix or improve?
In terms of like what they could be doing to be more sustainable or?
Yes, like what could communities do to ramp it up? I guess, we're not saying at all that the communities are doing things incorrectly. Not at all. Everybody's doing a great job. But because we don't have waves of immigration coming, we have to maintain what we have. So what could communities do to ramp it up, to involve more people?
So here's the thing. I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about this concept of identity. And I think as one wise person once said that if you're looking for connection with others, it should be with every creature in the planet. And if you are not doing that and you're limiting your connection, it's the beginning of tyranny.
Right.
So for me, this idea of long-term sustainability is really predicated on the idea that we can be inclusive. And if we include others in what we're doing, then it makes it relevant.
Right.
Because if it's only for a discrete group of people, then once those people die out, it's gone. So this idea of relevance is really tied for me to inclusion. And I actually think that being part of Hungarian activities can be very transformative because, dancing, Hungarian folk dance is, as I have seen in various events, gives people tremendous joy and a tremendous sense of community. And there's this sense of liberation that I see in people's eyes as they're, partnering up and listening to live music. It's an incredible experience. So for me, having witnessed that, my thought is, hey, I would like to share that with others. And you can see today that there are folks in Japan who dance Hungarian dance. There are folks in Argentina or folks all over the world who do that. So why not here in the States? We can, and my experience is purely, from a lens of folk dancing and folk music, because that's what I know. But, and so I can't speak to other areas, but I can say that those translate really well into daily life here and things that people are interested in doing. And I think there's already so many amazing things, like you said, that are already happening where we are, trying to translate and decode this like sometimes insular Hungarian culture for others. And there's all kinds of great stuff happening, from New Jersey to Toronto to Montreal to LA, San Diego, Texas, like it's, Oregon, it's already happening. I know that, for example, Cheke Tabor, the US's premier Hungarian dance and music camp. I mean, they do that, it's bilingual. Or Titi Tabor, up in the Pacific Northwest, same thing. It's very inclusive. And I Dance Hungary, like they have lots of different people all over the world being interviewed. And Magyar Kálmán has this podcast where he's doing English podcasting about folk dance and music. And so I could go on and on. And the Hungarian Free University just did a conference in Chicago. And again, it was also bilingual. So there are, lots of great examples. And yet, I would say, how can we do better? We can always do better. And I think we can be more collaborative. We can leverage resources better. Because the fact that, as you said, Christine, Hungarian diaspora is small.
Right.
That's just a fact. And we are, even in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia community, there are lots of small Hungarian organizations, same in New Jersey, same in other parts of the country. And, there's so much usefulness to working together and collaborating, yes, and partnering and co-sponsoring activities. And because money's tight, we're all good at different things. We can, there are so many, experiences that could inform another person's. So if we're going to do events and activities, let's communicate better. Let's find ways to talk, to share, and to include others. So I think for me, that would be desires that we do more of that we do more sharing, more collaboration, more partnerships in the future, because that ensures long-term sustainability. I also think one thing that we can do, ought to do, is, some of the younger generation has accused sometimes of us older, though not much older people, of, having the old guard, so to speak.
Right.
And I think it's also critical, extremely critical, to include young Hungarian Americans in what we're doing, because they have new ideas.
Absolutely.
They're passionate about newer things. They are really great on social media. They have different ways of networking, and they have this energy that we need and we want, and that's beautiful. And I think that would be also critically important, is to involve the next generation in our committees, in our planning groups, and hear from them, because otherwise we become really insular and we just do things the same way but just louder. And so
yeah.
And I would, so I rely on some of the people I listen to whip me into shape when I'm kind of off track. And I think that's really, so that diversity of demographic within your organizations, Hungarian American organizations, I think is incredibly critical.
Yes. I feel like you hit on a few really, really important points. And the first one that you had mentioned is just about putting things out there, collaborating, sharing. And I feel like sometimes, just as humans, we get so consumed with our own lives. So we might be part of an organization, whatever it is, a team, and you stop thinking about like advertising or sharing with other people. And, that's how we can help each other out. I mean, all of the communities, if you see one of your social media friends is having an event, repost it, because the people that follow you might be different than that, organizations, and you're going to spread the message a little wider, cast a larger net. And secondly, you mentioned the young. They definitely bring so much to the table. And, it's an old conversation. The older generation sometimes doesn't like to listen to the younger generation. That's a song that we've been singing for hundreds and hundreds of years. So, maybe it is time that maybe the younger generation needs to step up a little bit, and help out the older generation. And the older generation can also take a little bit of advice. The older generation is already asking the younger generation to fix their iPads when they visit grandma and grandpa, right? So we can translate that to the communities as well and just lift each other up. Because like I said in the beginning, nobody's doing anything wrong. I think we just need to learn how we can do things a little bit more creatively with what we have, with the younger generation and the older generations working together. And I feel like maybe they just don't realize, any of these groups, how much of an impact that makes. And I can use my small little example of how you reached out. We started communicating. You were reposting. So in my little world, you've expanded my world just from one person. So if we all did it, it would definitely benefit all of the different groups, get the word out there. And also get the word out there in advance. I feel like that's definitely something that I would like to know, maybe more than 1 or 2 days before something is happening. I feel like sometimes it's good to, advertise these events. And I think some people and organizations are great at it. And some organizations kind of just let you know a day before, and you're like, oh, darn, I already have plans. I can't make that, whereas people might plan differently. And the one thing that I have encountered is that I know a lot of people just through, my life connections that are, partially Hungarian, 50%, 20% speak, don't speak. And what I've noticed is a lot of the people that aren't full Hungarian are just like really have such a desire and passion to be part of something bigger. And I'm not saying that they've been turned away, because they have not. I just feel like there needs to be an avenue to reel them in, because I think they would be a super valued part of growing the community, keeping it sustainable, making more connections. So I think just reposting and just putting more of the word out there would definitely help that situation. What other things do you feel that we could do to organize more people to attend events? Did you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, one thing I think that is important to consider, as someone who works in communications, even in her real world job, is that today's audience is very diverse. So you've got different demographics, different ages, and people use different tools to connect with the networks they have. So when I'm talking about communications, I look at this very broadly, because simply one mode of communication is no longer enough. So to reach everyone, I think you need to really examine who is your audience. Yes, there are those who read things only by email. Well, TISA has an electronic newsletter for those folks using a CRM, email campaign tool, or they call it a customer relationship manager. And through that, I can track who opens an email, who doesn't, who clicks through, who doesn't. And that's one form of communication. And then there is Instagram, then there is Facebook, then there is TikTok, then there is Twitter. And every single one of those channels is a discrete group of people who actually tune into that. And so some people do both, some people cross over, but I guarantee you that the people who check their emails might be the same people who, connect to our Facebook account, but it's probably different people than connect to our Instagram. So if you are intending on reaching out, I think the very first and basic step is to look at who are the people that you already have in your audience and who are the people you want to attract, and then act accordingly. And really kind of sit down and hash this out again with a diverse group of people within your organization, because it's a fact that people over 50 look at Facebook.
Right.
People under 50, less likely to. Twitter is used, for example, as a professional or a career tool by a lot of folks. Instagram is more for fun, but also it's used by, 90% of Hungarian folk dance groups in Hungary. So, to post events, to demonstrate what they're working on, new choreography, videos, whatnot. It's all out there. So you have to really take a cold, hard look at what is it you now have and what do you want to be? And who do you want to communicate that to? So that's step 0. And then you can, grow. Then based on that, you can develop a digital identity and take steps to establish your digital identity, and then see what resources you have to feed that, because you need somebody at least sometimes to feed and nurture those communities, those discrete communities.
Yeah, 2 very important points. The first one, which you explained very professionally, is that you really do need to identify your community and the people that you want to reach, because they're definitely on different platforms. So when you're putting information out there on social media, you need to hit all of them, because people are receiving information from different places. And we're very loyal, or some people are very loyal to the social media places that they look. So they might not look on one, but they definitely look on the other two. And the second point is that you need to feed it. You need to feed it, and you need to feed it often with the messages, because that's how, just with social media, all of those behind the scenes things that happen, if you're not posting enough wherever it is that you're posting, depending on where you're posting, it could get lost in the feed and you might not even see it. So the more often that you do, and the more often that you feed it like a beast, you will see it more often, as we are all aware on social media. So those are two very important points. And people generally have other jobs in addition to being part of these communities. So that's where your point to involve the younger generation, because they are quicker to do these social media things that maybe the other generations aren't as comfortable with. So involving them will definitely increase visibility so that you can get more people to attend. Now, I feel like those are two of like the first strategies, like you said, point zero and ahead. Is there anything else that you have, or any other suggestions that you could make for people to find more success with including more people into their community?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I want to make this accessible to those who are listening and to those who are thinking about, where do we go from here? What are some actionable items? Because what I do might not be something that someone can do reasonably with their time and energy. So no need to go all out, but there are some things that are at least, I think, achievable. One of the things is, for example, if you're going to open up a Facebook group or a Facebook page or an Instagram account, the first and most important thing is that you don't have to post all the time, but you should post regularly, consistently. That is to say, let's say once a week, and it should be current and it should be timely. So if all you can commit to is that you're going to post something once every 2 weeks, then do it, but do it regularly. And whatever you post, make sure that it's timely communication, an upcoming event or a recent photo of somebody dancing or singing, whatever. It should be timely. That's I think is achievable. And the other thing is understand your audience, understand the usefulness of hashtags, understand tagging others. What does that mean? You don't have to do it well the first time. Look at some examples, see how other people do it. You can look at our channels and, there are some hashtags that are really relevant and useful. Learn to use them. And it's a learning curve. It takes years to really learn how to do it well, but just start small. That's critically important. And then think about, how are you going to utilize and how the other channels that you have? Are you going to post all at once, or are you going to do once? Decide. You need a communication plan. You need to talk to people in your organization and say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and let's have an understanding that that's what we're doing. And who can we recruit to help us out? So that's what I would suggest, is that whatever you're doing, make sure that it's achievable, so that there's nothing worse, to be honest, than an abandoned Twitter account or an Instagram account or a Facebook group that isn't fed and nurtured. So and it's better if you post less, but you do it more consistently, than if you have like a fast and furious posting and then nothing for 6 or 7 months. Because people are, I think, looking for information, they're looking for connection, they're looking for community. And if you're not there to kind of mirror that back, then they will stop coming.
I agree. The consistency, and also because they look forward to it. About 10 years ago, blogs were very, very like the hot topic. And, I would look forward to drinking my coffee in the morning and seeing who's posted on the blogs that I followed. So similarly, the same thing now on social media. I look forward to seeing posts from the people that I know. And it's important to feed that, because that's how you get ideas. There was definitely an example. I follow this one Hungarian person who's kind of famous, and he was doing a presentation in New York, which I would have gone to. However, it was posted on social media that he was going to be presenting it. It was like less than 24 hours prior. So timely postings, we appreciate that. If you could post it with enough time for people to plan, not the day of or the day before, or sometimes a week ahead. And again, you definitely need to get people who are on board, come up with that communications plan, like you said, because people that are interested in communications and have the knowledge of all of these social media platforms, they know all that because they're involved in it. Just like yourself, you have so much knowledge when it comes to that. And there are a lot of people that are interested in that, and that these communities could really find people within their community to help them out and improve their plan, because that'll just help them overall as well.
And it can be fun. I mean, the fact of the matter is, connecting with sort of like an audience out there that you don't know can be fun. It's like it's almost like gamifying your communication plan. And so I think of it as fun. I love supporting other groups. I love liking something they're doing. I love great photography. So, part of it that's draws me to Instagram. So, and also then you're supporting colleagues. You get support back. It's a virtual reality. And especially in terms of it being used as a professional tool, I'm all for it, because, it's a way to engage. It's a way to engage. It's a way to build relationships. I mean, you can say they're not real, sure. But you know what? It's just one way. I mean, obviously I'm all for in-person things. That's sure. Always the best way. But, we had a situation recently where a person who was living in the Pacific Northwest just moved to the DMV. And the way that she connected to TISA was through Instagram. That's how she knew we were here. That's how she knew to message us. And I ended up taking this person to a local tanzas, and she became involved with TISA because she was a former dancer. So that's how these things happen. If people don't know you exist or that you have a digital identity, then you will not have potential folks who will support your organization and your events. So, because we're living in a global, I think, economy, we're living in I think there's a lot of brain circulation going on in the world where, especially nowadays, if we have new Hungarians coming in the area, especially in our area, there's the World Bank, there's the IMF, there's all kinds of global kind of jobs that are circulating. So people are more mobile than they used to be. And in that sense, I think the best way to be present is to be on social media or some sort of digital identity where people know that you exist. It's just that simple. And if you don't develop your digital identity, Google will do it for you. So which would you rather, that you decide how to represent yourself, or, it's just a Google search? So, and the diaspora, the Hungarian diaspora is huge. I mean, I know that, there are, beautiful folk dance ensembles in Canada because I saw it on Instagram, and I connected to some folks there through Instagram, through no other means. So for me, it's all about like, let's also support one another. Let's network personally. Let's network on social media, and in terms of what to post, like, you're sitting around, it's a cold, dreary Sunday afternoon, as can be sometimes in the mid-Atlantic. I have a free 15 minutes to spare. What can I put on social media? Well, you know what you can do? You can use archival photos. You can use old videos. You can do current events. You can do dancer profiles, or you can just help somebody else market their events.
Exactly.
But there are lots of things you can do, in 10, 15 minutes. That's not very taxing. And, you might actually really enjoy it. I remember a funny story that when my parents and I came to America, one of my classmates said, she's moving. And I was like, what does that mean? Moving, like, right. Are they moving from point A to point B? Like, what are they talking about? And I didn't understand. And she's moving. Her family's moving. I had no clue. I had to ask one of my teachers, Miss Murphy, and she's like, Anna, they're moving away to another town because the father got a job. And I was like, what? I had never heard of such a thing. I mean, Granted, okay, my family, went to the US and we moved there, but it was, just like a visit. idea of moving and picking up your house, selling it and moving somewhere else. I mean, in Hungary, when I was living in it, that was not a thing. People didn't move and transport themselves somewhere else. Like you stayed where you were. You lived in the condominium in Budapest where your parents grew up or your grandparents. Maybe you moved from, the Vidék or the countryside to Budapest for a job, but it's very unlikely that you moved your whole family somewhere else. But that is how it is today, is that's more of a possibility. And so, I would love to connect with the folks that come through our area in advance and let them know, hey, you're welcome here. Come and join us. We got lots of fun things to do. You can be in the US, but still, connect to some stuff that you might miss at home.
Right. I feel like that's such it's a funny story because it's true. A long time ago, people didn't move as much as maybe they move now, with job opportunities. So that I feel like that's a great idea as well, to have some type of platform where people that are coming in can still come to the US, but also stay connected. So I feel like you have like a platform that you could create for that, which would be a great next step for people coming over. And an additional good point that you made, well, all your points are great. We met over social media. We had never met in person before. And I feel like every person that I've interviewed, I think I've met over social media just by reaching out, So people, if you're not aware, there's such a value of reaching out and communicating over these social media platforms, in addition to just posting, because people are extremely gracious. And someone said to me in the beginning of this adventure that lifting you up doesn't push me down. So I feel like that's something that all of our communities can remember, lifting up people that maybe don't speak Hungarian or that are looking to join these communities. It doesn't mean like you're pushing yourself down. It really it builds yourself up even more. So those are really great strategies. Posting more, being consistent, welcoming people, not that they're not welcoming, but identifying that welcoming more people is a great thing for your community.
And also, I kind of live by some of this, when I'm thinking about these audiences, is that, you cannot wait for people to come to you. You need to go out to them. And the idea of sitting there, kind of in the lotus position with your eyes closed and hoping for the very best, that's a nice idea. And also, this idea of sitting on your laurels and having your reputation precede you, and that your reputation is enough to draw people into what you're about and what you'd like to do. It doesn't really apply anymore, because with the explosion of this digital content that's out there, and, social media, and where our young people's attention is today, and where everybody's attention is, it's you have to ask yourself, how do you compete with that? And the thing about it is that in today's kind of global economy and global marketplace, there are so many choices on how you can spend your time. And what might have worked 10 years ago, what might have worked 20 years ago, the paper newsletters, the emails, that's not going to be enough. I hate to say that, but I'm going to go on a limb and say, you got to do more. If you're looking to ensure the long-term sustainability of your Hungarian community, your organization, your folk dance group, which is constantly beset with the challenge of succession. Like, how do we find new dancers? That's a ongoing challenge for us, is how do we get new folks and younger folks into, Hungarian dance? How do you ensure that? Because there are literally so many competing ideas and events and things going on. So how do you set yourself apart? Or at least at the very best, how do you become a contender?
Or get noticed?
How do you get noticed? How do you become one of the choices? Because I just really strongly believe that to say, today's young people are not interested, they're interested in X. How do you know? Maybe it's never been offered. Maybe they've never been exposed. Maybe they've never been asked because people have written them off and said, oh, they're not interested. How do you know? So in a way, social media is the great equalizer. It's the great democracy of ideas. It's where we, the TISA ensemble, or, many other organizations can be equally present and be available for participation, for exposure. And then, and you never know where that leads. So, I really, really think that you have to go to the source. You cannot wait for people to come to you. It just doesn't work that way.
That's an amazing point, because you really do have to everybody has to make the effort. But if you want it to happen, whether you're in the community and you want to gain more people, or if you want to join a community, you have to make it happen. I just saw this on social media before we were posting. It was Jane Fonda, Sally Fields, Lily Tomlin, and they were talking about women's relationships or just friendships in general. But they were speaking of women's relationships, is that you have to be intentional, consistent, and you have to seek it out. And I thought to myself, wow, that it was so powerful that all these women, because they sought each other out. I mean, clearly they were in the same industry, but they weren't all friends just because they were in the same industry. One of them actively sought out the friendship of someone else. And the point she made was, when I knew she was actively seeking out my friendship, I was more open to being a friend. So we can parallel that to communities, any type of community or groups, dances, bands, is that actively seek out more members, actively seek out people to participate, and vice versa. If you're interested in these things, you need to actively seek out these communities.
Yeah,
don't feel embarrassed, reach out, be relevant.
I think this idea of accessibility, I think, not everyone has a smartphone, and that's a reality in today's world. Like that's not everybody does. And there are people from socioeconomically challenged situations.
Absolutely.
People with, financial issues, be whatever that may be. We, at least in TISA, we want to make Hungarian folk dancing accessible, no matter what your background. So you can't reach us on Facebook. We've got email. You can't reach us on, Twitter. We'll find another way. We'll find another way. But, if your information is not accessible, it's not inviting, because then it's insular. It's the opposite. Then you're really talking to a very discrete group of people. And all the Hungarian organizations around where we are, they're very open. I love that.
Yes, I agree. And that's great that the organizations in your area are that way, that they are welcoming and that they are open, because it does create all those great opportunities for people seeking connection. And I think that's really what this topic has been, seeking connection, either with a community or seeking a connection with new members for your community. And I feel like we could talk about a million strategies, but step one, I really feel what you said was the social media and the communication and the consistency of that, because that's really going to get the word out. That's like step one for growing. And maybe in 2023, that should be our goal, to really inspire others. And sometimes people are, reserved, and maybe they don't know how to, reach out. So maybe it's like my job, your job, other people that are also good at, or I'm not saying that I'm great at it, but who are more comfortable with social media, we can start inspiring them, reposting them, reaching out to them.
The other carrot I would throw out there as well, Christine, is that, like it or not, I've actually heard somebody anecdotally talk about this in Hollywood, that they chose one actress over another because of their social media following. So like it or not, it's kind of a reality. And it's really important to be present, because there's this other aspect to being present, which is funding, which is a whole separate discussion, which really isn't the topic of today's podcast. But all I'm going to say is that I think when you apply for funding, because again, money's really tight and we're small Hungarian organizations, and every penny matters. I think that idea of networking and collaboration is critically important. But also, when you're applying for funding, I think funding agencies want to know that you have impact, broad impact. And one of the ways that's, immediately measurable is your social media presence. And so I just want to put that small thought out there that, we have now, years later, 3 years later, we have social media impact because we've been working at it. Right. It does matter because the funding agency wants to see that you're broadcasting their good work with you. their funding of you and what you're doing to connect to others. And along those lines, TISA has been able to secure funding from the Maryland State Arts Council, to whom we're extremely thankful because they've made a number of really, really important programming available to us because we've gotten their funding. The Betlen Gábor Alap, which is a Hungarian funding agency. Again, it's something that is a consideration. It's not the only reason why they decide one thing or another, but it is something that is a plus factor, shall we say. It's something that people are looking at now. And I think even as employers, I think we look at, you check it out. You check out what someone's about. What is their involvement in X, Y, and Z? Are they plugged in? Are they, there's like stuff you can see from people's social media. And I think, having TISA have this presence, I think people know what we're about.
Right. It's like your digital identity is really allowing more doors to be opened for the TISA ensemble because of their social media presence. And I think that is the carrot, as you were saying, that could be the carrot for the motivating encouragement that we're trying to communicate here to groups. You have to be present, consistent, and you'll have great things happen for you. Because you're lifting other people up and you're also going to help yourself out in the end by being consistent and out there. And it doesn't happen overnight. We want it to, because you look at all these other things like, oh, look how many followers they have, or, look what they have. But you will grow if you're consistent. And if you're gracious to other groups and other people, it can expand you in so many different ways. Personally, professionally, and for community organizations as well. So these are really great points. I feel like this should be the 2023 goal for our groups, is to really just start out with that strategy. Let's improve our social media and let's check back in a year from now and let's see what improvements have you seen as a group. Did it help your group? Did you gain more people in your community? What age groups are they? What social media platforms did you feel worked best? Which they all work for different groups, but maybe that's a goal that we can try to encourage with people. Also, biting off more than you can chew is never a good thing. So, like I said, we can offer 20 strategies, but then it becomes overwhelming. Start with one and master it, or at least get to like a level of mastery so that, you can improve. And I think that's like the strongest strategy for maintaining relevance. With the Hungarian heritage is just start posting and help each other.
And like you said, don't compare yourself to somebody else. It's the cause of great unhappiness in life, to compare one to anyone else. Just stay in your swim lane and do your thing and just do the very best you can and your organization. And I think that's critical because, and then you invite the idea of having fun doing it.
Yes.
If it feels like work, then maybe you need to delegate. But
true.
but because everyone's got their own networks, we're not in direct competition with one another. In fact, we are all one large Hungarian community. We are all plugged into different people. Whether it's in Canada or New Mexico or Las Vegas, it's all completely different.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's just something we need to remind ourselves is that. Help each other out, right? You're not putting your community at risk by advertising someone else's event that's happening because it's hundreds of miles away or 10 states away, so it's not like you're drawing people from one event away from yours. We could help each other and because we are one big community. So I feel like that's the strong strategy. I think that's what we should offer. I feel like that's the strategy that we should close with as far as just encouraging that. And, maybe that's something that, you and I will start posting on our social medias, about lifting each other up or by demonstration, start reposting people. And then, hey, maybe they'll start reposting you back and we'll lead by example. I think that's a good way too. And it'll be a good virus that'll catch on, right? We could use that for sure. So are there any other topics as far as strategies or relevance or things that you'd like to tell us? One of the things that is important, I think, is
to be aware that, we are, in the American culture here. And potentially we would have people who are just English speaking as an audience, and to make sure that we include those folks, as we did, like I was mentioning, at the Hungarian Free University in Chicago. They had a meeting was organized. I was very fortunate and grateful to be part of the organizing committee, who was chaired by Szűcs János in Chicago. But one of the things that he was very big on was that, we make this available to anyone who comes to the conference. And so I think that kind of ethos is very, very important, that we, it's nice that we can speak Hungarian among ourselves. I have to admit, there is a part of me that really likes that, because I don't live, in Hungary now, and being able to connect to my fellow country people, I think is important. I do enjoy that. There's a part of me that just feels like I've come home or something like that when I'm able to express myself in Hungarian. And so I love that opportunity. But if we are going to host public events, I think that, it's a nice thing to include everybody, and at least to make them feel welcome. And, so that's something that I think is important.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of kindness, as a matter of, good professional, behavior on the part of any organization. And I would say that when you're thinking about your social media channels, to be mindful of the same thing, just to address the different audiences through, basically, again, where they are at, and through whatever means they're most comfortable communicating. And that includes hashtags, for example, like, I use English hashtags, I use Hungarian hashtags, etc., because I want to make sure, whatever we post is flagged by the bots that be out there.
I think that's an impactful statement. Some may think it's controversial because they're not maybe accustomed to not speaking in Hungarian all the time, but it's definitely something that, since you're bringing to light, I think people, they're craving that, they're looking to join, and they're also looking to be able to understand. There are a lot of people that, don't speak well and would really relish attending events where they felt just a little bit more welcome, because if not all parts, some parts were also in English, and because that would make more people also inspired to join or to attend, because it is kind. Not that you can't speak Hungarian, like you said, that you have like this connection to it, but I think that would send a nice message. And not that people are closing people out of communities by not speaking English. I don't think that's the message we're trying to send. I think it's more of a message of, maybe let's be a little bit more mindful when you're planning events or on social media. I have noticed that even people in Hungary are posting in both English and in Hungarian now, because they realize if they want to broaden their, their circle of connection, that, they do post it in both languages, which is cool. And I think that was a smart thing to do. But great points.
And if I can just, perhaps bring in analogies, like, the whole Táncház and the origin of the Táncház was really about a village coming together and celebrating and dancing. And to me, it's very symbolic of I think what we're trying to achieve, which is that, villages, everybody did this. So it was very inclusive. The elderly, the teenage, the toddler, the middle-aged, everybody was present, and everybody was allowed to be present and to feel included. And so I always think, like, the whole essence of Hungarian village life, or life in Erdély, was the nucleus of everything was the life in the village. And so if you really think about that idea, then yes, all of it is in it. Everything is included, like all of the above. And that, come join our village, come join our dance, come listen to our music. We'll show you how to do it. So to me, it's just so elemental that, if we just go back to that point, then I think things fall into place, because the whole idea is like, you are having so much fun and life is so beautiful. And dancing is so liberating. It's like when you play music, I think Halmos Béla was talking about, like, you feel like you're in heaven. You're taken to a different place. You are elevated. If you follow that mentality or that practice, then why wouldn't you want to invite anyone within your circle to like enjoy that and to participate in that? So that's where I'm kind of starting from, and I hope the others would do too. But we have a lot to offer, and music, culture, literature, and we've got it all. And there's no reason why people cannot enjoy it and find joy in what we're about.
I agree. That's a great analogy about the Tanzhauses and the villages, because you really didn't even need to speak to each other, because it doesn't matter what your age was, you were united with music and dance. So it's international as well. You don't have to speak a language to dance. I feel like we've connected all those points. You don't need to speak. Dance and music, it's an international thing. It's exciting. And let's just put it out there. Let's start helping each other on social media, which is the strategy that I think is going to bring us closer together to be a tighter knit community of Hungarians. These are all great points. And I really look forward to seeing how 2023 is going to play out for all of us. I think I'm going to make a concerted effort to make sure that I start reposting even more people. So maybe we could cause this nice chain reaction with all the Hungarian groups to be more open on their social media platforms and start working within their own communities to see who can help them make that happen for them. So is there anything else you'd like to wrap up with?
No, just Christine, thank you for having me. It was a really nice conversation, and I hope that folks can take away a couple of useful points that maybe they can use for their organizations, because that's the whole point. And of course, anyone can reach me, find me through TISA's channels, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any insights I might have.
Yeah, I think that is amazing, because I feel like people can learn a lot from your presence. So I will definitely put all of your social media connections in the show notes so that they can access that. And I really appreciate that you were here today and gave such great insight, because I feel like I've learned things too, and I look forward to employing them in 2023. So thanks so much for being here today, Anna. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to this Sweet 16 episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast with Anna de Cheke Qualls. I hope you feel the positivity that we tried to promote in this episode, and that you feel inspired to make deeper connections within your Hungarian community. We are all seeking the same thing, which is a closer connection to our Hungarian heritage, and you never know how a small gesture on your part can positively influence someone seeking that first connection to their Hungarian heritage. And I know that I will be using a lot of Anna's communication expertise going forward as well. As always, you will find all the ways to connect with Anna and the podcast in the show notes below. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to my audio editor, Tori Irvin, for working her audio magic on this episode. Our theme music is Hungarian Dance by Pony Music, used with a special license from Envato Market. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts so we can continue to connect our modern lives with our Hungarian heritage. Until next time, goodbye everyone. Sziasztok mindenkinek!